Sure. On the campaign trail, I hear from businesses almost every single day that they can't find enough people to come to work. And it's big businesses, small businesses, manufacturing, farming, across the board. Our employers are looking for workers. And this was happening before the pandemic, but it's really been exacerbated. And what I'm also finding is that we are lacking skilled workforce. And people are telling me that they don't have people that have the skills and the training for the jobs in the positions they'd like to fill. And so here in the state of Ohio, we do some projects that help with that, but I think it should be national federal policy that if a company invests in a technical school or community college where they bring their equipment, their training into that school and they train those students and then they hire those students, they should be getting a federal tax credit for it. I think it's a win-win. It's a win for a student to have a ready, available job with a skilled the training that they need, and then it helps the employers because they have a ready workforce. I think this will encourage more and more people to get into the workforce. We've also seen so many people sitting on the sidelines with the pandemic. It's time to people to get back to work. I have seen so many cases where with vaccine mandates and other COVID protocols that it's making difficult for employers. We need to stop that. We need to encourage more people to get back into the workforce. I talked to a Dairy Queen owner. It's her business. It's her livelihood. And she said that every time her employees are getting the child tax credit, a few months ago, they would just call off work and she'd have to close. I'm not against helping those who can't help themselves, but we need to get people back to work, and we need to encourage people that good work is good for the soul, and we need to train our workforce so that we can be competitive and grow our businesses in this country. Yes. Well, we see now that last week it was announced that inflation is now 7.4%. It hasn't been this high since Olivia Newton-John was topping the charts. A lot of factors are at play in inflation. One of the biggest factors is the fact that the Biden administration, the Democrats, have injected our economy with over $5 trillion worth of spending. It's hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And we see that money is inflating prices across the board. We see a shortage of supplies, in large part due to the workforce shortage and disruptions because of the pandemic. Another factor that's affecting the inflation right now is the Biden administration's attack on our energy industry. And one of the first things he did was to cancel the Keystone Pipeline. We were energy independent under President Trump. Ohio is an oil and gas producing state. In order for our industrial and manufacturing base and our farmers to be productive, we need to have reliable sources of energy. And we should not be attacking one source of energy over another. I'm in favor of all of the above energy resources, but we should not be attacking the oil and gas industry the way the Democrats are doing right now. And because of that, we're seeing fuel costs rise exponentially, which is problematic across the board. I talk to many people who the cost of production is going up because of the energy costs. It's affecting our farming community as well. Fertilizer, which is related to the oil and gas industry, is 4 times the cost it was last year. So this is a situation that has to be addressed. It is not going to be addressed very easily, but there's some things that we can do, which is stop the spending, stop the attack on our energy industry. Right. We've continued to see healthcare costs skyrocket. And obviously that's affecting employers' bottom line. Obamacare was supposed to reduce the cost of healthcare, but quite frankly, it's done the opposite. I've talked to employers where their employer-based healthcare costs have doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and premiums seem to be going up annually. This is quite frankly, affecting the bottom line of our businesses. Look, it's about transparency and accountability in healthcare. We have far too often too many middlemen in the middle of healthcare, where pharmacy benefit managers are controlling costs of prescription drugs. We need transparency on prescription drugs. We need transparency on treatments. It should not be that you go to one facility and get an MRI and it costs X, and you go to another facility and it costs X times 3. We need to have a consumer-directed healthcare. It should not be the federal government in the middle of all of it. I like to say we don't want healthcare being run like the BMV. No offense to the BMV, but it really should be patient-focused and doctor-focused and deliverables. And so we need transparency and reducing the costs and real competition. Higher taxes reduces investment for businesses. Under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that President Trump championed and the Republicans in Congress passed, we saw a reduction in corporate taxes. And as a result, it went from 35% to 21%. As a result, many businesses, because of that, invested more dollars into their businesses. I talked to so many folks who built new warehouses, added on to their production facilities, gave their employees bonuses, and hired more workers. Reducing taxes on businesses is something that I plan on standing up for. There are job producers, especially our small businesses. We need to make sure that they are in a competitive environment, that they can feel that they can continue to invest and grow their business. Really what's happening now with Joe Biden's Build Back Better, or as I call it, Build Back Broke, policies where they are talking about raising corporate taxes has been a drag on corporate investment and business investment. Businesses are unsure what their economic environment is going to be like in this year, especially with rising inflation. So they need reliability. They need to know the corporate tax structure, but it most importantly needs to be at the lowest rate that we can sustain it. And I think that the tax cuts and job rate is a good rate. If Biden had his way, our corporate taxes would go back up. It would be higher than the Chinese Communist Party corporate tax rate. That means our country's less competitive. I plan on championing Ohio and Ohio's businesses in the United States Senate. I've signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, and I think it's really critically important for folks to understand that we should not be using tax policy to harm businesses, but to have businesses grow. So regulations can have an undue burden on businesses. Oftentimes they spend hours and have to hire outside compliance firms or actually hire more people to just keep up with the regulations. The Federal Register should not be almost the size of a building. It's very difficult for businesses to even start because of the regulatory environment. We should be encouraging more entrepreneurs and more businesses to start and grow and not be in a situation where they're afraid to start a business because of the regulatory environment, or for businesses to just keep up and always be concerned that they're going to get caught in some regulatory trap. We have to have a cost-benefit analysis on our regulatory environment. Look, I live on a farm. I do not want unclean water and dirty air. And I think Republicans are one of the most conservation-minded people because oftentimes we're hunters, we're farmers, and we want to keep our environment clean and safe. However, we should not be using the environmental protection regulatory environment that the Biden administration would love to put in place that I think would, quite frankly, put an undue burden on businesses and hamper growth. For me, every time there is a law or a reg that goes into place, that cost-benefit analysis has to be put into place. Congress also has to reassert its oversight authority over our agencies in Washington, D.C. Far too often, those agencies go unchecked. They are there by statutory authority. Congress needs to reassert that authority and to make sure that those agencies are held accountable to Congress. They are unaccounted for bureaucrats running the regulatory environment, and it's creating a very difficult situation for our business community. And so that's one thing I'd like to tackle in the U.S. Senate is reining that in. Well, look, as I said earlier, we have to have energy independence. We have to have reliable sources of energy. We cannot have energy costs skyrocketing. Most of our manufacturing-based producers here in Ohio need that reliable source of energy. Our farming community needs a reliable source of energy. We need to make sure we get people back to work. As I said, good work is good for the soul. Our economic competitiveness is critical for this country's growth. We need to bring back our manufacturing jobs from overseas. We saw more and more during the pandemic that some of our critical supplies are made overseas. Made in America is a great idea, and it should be championed in the United States Senate. We live in the greatest country in the face of this earth. We have the greatest workforce. We need to train our workforce, and we need to make sure that we remain a global competitor as the greatest country. For the rest of my life, we'll be Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves.